The late afternoon sun poured through the attic window, painting dust motes gold and illuminating memories as if they, too, could be touched and held. Mr. Ann sat on a low wooden stool, the edges of the tin box pressing into his knees, the yellowed envelope trembling in his hands. For a moment, the world outside, the laughter of children drifting over the garden fence, the distant bark of a dog, the rustle of autumn leaves, faded into a hush. All that remained was the whisper of the past, fragile and insistent. He unfolded the letter with a reverence reserved for relics or old prayers. The paper, thin as moth wings, seemed ready to dissolve beneath his fingers. Yet the ink, a deep blue, had not faded. It was as if Lynn had written the words only yesterday. His breath caught, and he began to read. Dear Anne, if you are reading this, perhaps it means that time has softened the sharp edges of our parting. I hope this letter finds you well, in whatever season of life you are in. I am writing this on the eve of my departure. The city is quiet tonight. The jacaranda trees outside my window are heavy with purple bloom, reminding me of you and the hours we spent beneath their shade. I want to tell you that I waited at the station, just as we promised. I watched each train arrive, each one carrying away faces and stories, but not yours. I waited until the last announcement, until the sky turned silver with morning. I understand. Maybe you thought it was easier this way, not to say goodbye. Maybe you wanted to spare us both the pain of parting, or perhaps you felt that my future should not be tethered to old dreams. I do not blame you. Life is full of choices, and some of them are unbearably difficult. But I want you to know, I was never waiting for certainty or for promises. I was only waiting for you, the boy who laughed with me in the rain, who listened to my dreams, who cared for my silences as much as my words. In these last few days, I have replayed our moments together. I remember the afternoon we skipped class and wandered through the old book market, searching for a poetry collection that didn't yet exist. I remember you folding paper cranes for me when I was sick, your hands awkward but determined, believing the thousandth would grant my wish. I remember the way you looked at me when you thought I wasn't watching, gentle, hopeful, and just a little afraid. I am not angry, Anne. I want you to know that. If anything, I am grateful. In loving you, I discovered parts of myself I did not know existed. I learned patience, kindness, and the ache of longing. I learned that love is not always about holding on. It is sometimes about letting go with an open heart. I do not know what the future holds. Perhaps, when you read this, we will be strangers passing on the street, or perhaps you will remember me only as a chapter in your youth. That is all right. I will carry a piece of you with me wherever I go. If you ever find this letter, I hope you will smile and remember that, for a time, you were deeply loved, with all my heart. Lynn. The words blurred before his eyes as he reached the end. He sat in silence, the attic suddenly feeling both impossibly small and as vast as the years that had passed. The ache in his chest was an old, familiar companion, one he had learned to live with, but never truly understood until now. He closed his eyes, letting the memories flood back. He saw Lynn's face in the half-light of the university library, her laughter echoing across the courtyard as they dodged the first drops of summer rain. He remembered her quiet courage, her unspoken dreams, and the warmth of her hand in his. All the things that made up their love, ordinary, extraordinary, now shimmered in the golden light of memory. Regret, sharp and sudden, swept over him. How many times had he replayed that day in his mind, imagining a different choice? How often had he wondered what might have happened if he had gone to the station, if he had said goodbye, if he had let her see the hope and the fear in his eyes. He had told himself he was protecting her, but perhaps he had only been protecting himself, from pain, from vulnerability, from the risk that love, once spoken, might not be enough. And yet, as he held the letter, he realized that Lynn had understood this long before he did. She had forgiven him, even as he struggled to forgive himself. Her words were not an accusation, but a gift, a quiet, enduring testament to love's resilience. She had carried him with her across oceans and years, just as he had carried her in the silent spaces of his life. Outside, a breeze stirred the dry leaves, sending them swirling in lazy circles. The world moved on, indifferent to the heartache and hope that lingered in the attic's shadow. And Rose, folding the letter carefully and placing it back in the tin box. He ran his fingers over the embroidered handkerchief, the movie ticket, the photographs, each one a thread in the tapestry of his past. He knew he could not change what was done. The years would not return, and the choices made in youth could not be undone. But as he stood by the attic window, watching the sun dip behind the garden wall, he felt a quiet peace settling in. Lynn's words had reached him across time, reminding him that love, once given, does not disappear. It endures, in memory, in forgiveness, in the small rituals of remembrance. He wiped his eyes, a smile ghosting his lips. He would keep the letter, not as a relic of regret, but as a reminder of a love that had shaped him, softened him, made him who he was. In the golden light of autumn, with the world slipping gently toward evening, Mr. Ann felt, at last, that he could let go. Not of Lynn, or of the past, but of the sorrow that had shadowed his heart for so long. As he closed the tin box and placed it back on the shelf, he whispered a thank you to the silent room, to Lynn, to the boy he once was, and to the grace that comes, sometimes aids, with the turning of the years. And as the first stars appeared in the dusky sky, he descended the attic stairs, carrying with him not just memories, but a quiet, enduring hope. Dear Anne, as I write this, there are 2 hours left before my train leaves. I waited for you, at the bus stop, at our favorite cafe where you first read me Trin Kung Sun's poem, and finally, on the bench beneath the crepe myrtle in our schoolyard. But you didn't come. I waited, and then I understood. Maybe this is your way of saying goodbye. I'm not angry, just a little cold inside. I write this not to blame you, but to thank you. Thank you for being the most beautiful part of my youth. I'll take those memories with me to France, like a glass jar of sunshine. When I feel alone, I'll open it and smile. If one day you find this letter, I hope you'll remember that there was once a girl who sketched you in the rain, pressed a crepe myrtle flower in your book, and loved you with her entire youth. Goodbye, Anne. Lynn. Mr. Ann sat still for a long time. Through the twilight falling gently outside the window, something inside him loosened. Not tears, but something deeper. A release. He picked up the box again and found a small photo. Lynn stood by the Eiffel Tower, holding the same daisy-embroidered handkerchief. On the back of the photo was a line written in rushed handwriting. I'm doing okay, Anne. Just, sometimes, I remember. No one knew if Lynn was still somewhere out there, if she had returned to Vietnam or started a new life. But for him, the letter was enough. It patched something in his soul. Not a wound anymore, but a part of himself, acknowledged and finally at peace. That night, Anne couldn't sleep. He lay awake, sifting through memory after memory. The next morning, he made a decision. Something he should have done decades ago. He would search for Lynn. The search. He started with old university friends. Calls, messages, class photos. Most were out of touch, had moved or changed numbers. But eventually, he found Trong, Lynn's best friend, now living in Dalat. During a tearful phone call, Trang said, after France, Lynn studied art. She painted constantly, always the same eyes. She once told me, I'm not angry with An, but some cuts don't bleed, they just stay. She married a Frenchman, but the marriage didn't last. 10 years later, she came back to Vietnam. Around 2003, she opened a tiny art shop in Hoi An, never remarried, and never mentioned your name again. Anne's heart ached. Lynn had returned, lived within reach, and he never knew. While he was busy with life, family, routine, a part of him remained locked in a tin box. Is she still in Hoi An? He asked. Trang paused. She passed away last year. Cancer. Seeing Lynn, one last time, a week later, Anne traveled to Hoi An. Quietly, without telling anyone. He brought only the tin box, the photo, and the letter. Lynn's shop had been sold, but one of her former students, a young woman named Vi, remembered her. Vi told him Lynn had lived peacefully, painting in the afternoons, and often staring out the window with a faraway look. She kept a photo, Vi said, A young man in a white shirt, reading under a crepe myrtle tree. Vi led him to a small cemetery outside the old town. Lin's grave was simple, bordered by white daisies. Anne knelt and gently placed his own letter on her stone. A letter written just the night before. Lin, I'm sorry for not coming, for making you wait, for my silence. Today, I came, late, but true. I no longer have youth nor dreams, just regret, and a thank you never spoken. You remain the most beautiful bloom in the garden of my memory. Anne. A soft wind stirred the air, carrying the scent of daisies. The clouds above seemed to drift slower, like time catching its breath. First loves don't always end perfectly, but sometimes it only takes a letter, opened at the right moment, for a heart to finally exhale after decades of silence.